Willful Blindness, how a network of narcos, tycoons, and CCP agents infiltrated the West.
Our speaker today has written a very disconcerting but very illuminating book, and I'm going to hand it over to James to make introductions. I look forward to our speaker's presentation today. So James, please take it away.
Great, thank you, Susan. I'd like to introduce everybody, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Sam Cooper as our keynote speaker to this year's annual general meeting. For those who do not know Sam, I've had the pleasure of getting to know him over the last couple of years as our work crosses paths. Sam's an investigative journalist currently at Global News, where he joined in spring of 2018 after he was reporting with the Vancouver province in the Vancouver Sun in BC. He's now based in Ottawa, and he focuses on political corruption, organized crime, and financial crime, foreign influence, national security, and intelligence, and holding powerful figures to account. And of course, the reason that we have Sam with us today as our keynote speaker is he is also the author of the #1 bestseller on Amazon, and it's been up in the charts, Willful Blindness, How a Network of Narcos, Tycoons, and CCP Agents Infiltrated the West, put out by Optimum Publishing. And it's a great pleasure to have you join us today, Sam.
Thank you so much. It's a real honor for me. And James, we have been speaking for years, and I know Denny, as well as I believe some other people that are watching the AGM today. And so the timing couldn't be more pleasurable or perfect for me. You're right. I'm amazed with the early both reviews and reception of Willful Blindness. Of course, it is a controversial book because this is new research. Certainly, some of the findings would be known to intelligence agents in various in the RCMP or CSIS, but I think I set out to do a service for the Canadian public by revealing what I found out about these very disturbing crime trends that have taken root in cities such as Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal for the past 30, 40 years. And so I will thank you, James, for agreeing that I would start with, I believe, a short reading from the first chapter of the book that I do think really sets up the conversation today and all the issues. And this, I start at an anti-money laundering summit in 2015 for BC Lottery Corporation. It was run by Ross Alderson, the anti-money laundering director, who I can say this, I've revealed, he's the primary source for this book. For his own reasons, he decided to disclose highly confidential corporate documents that identified the major players in this crime scheme. And so I'll just get into what was revealed or debated at that summit. The correct answer to the summit's headline question, do BC casinos have a money laundering problem, was obvious to most people there, but not everyone. Everybody there knew the primary revenue driver for BC government casinos were visits from ultra-wealthy Chinese businessmen. At any given time, there were about 100 foreign VIP patrons gambling at the Lottery Corp casinos in Richmond, Vancouver, Burnaby, New Westminster, and Coquitlam. These visitors were among the richest and most powerful men in the world, industrialist tycoons and Chinese state, military, and police officials who claimed to have amassed tremendous fortunes as real estate developers, miners, oil barons, shipbuilders, and construction moguls. Gambling is illegal in China, banned for the masses by the Communist Party, but betting is also deeply embedded in the country's underground culture. And from Alderson's point of view, gambling was permitted for China's elite through backdoor channels. For these whale gamblers, baccarat was the game of choice, and they traveled the world to play it. In some Lottery Corp casinos, in private salons where the VIPs were treated like royalty, they could bet up to $100,000 per hand. And they won and lost obscene amounts of money at Richmond's River Rock Casino, the favorite destination in Canada for the whales from China, who also gambled in Macau, Las Vegas, and Melbourne. At the elite level, what the lottery corp called VVIP players, the gamblers bought chips with no less than $500,000 cash per trip. Alderson knew that China's economy had to be considered in order to grasp what was happening in lottery corp casinos. He arranged a presentation from Canadian foreign correspondent Jonathan Manthorpe, a veteran China watcher. Manthorpe's point was that Canadian leaders, including the bankers and bureaucrats and casino brass at the summit, hadn't taken the first step to answer serious questions about funds pouring in from China and the impact on Canada. How much money is being spirited out illegally, Manthorpe asked the crowd. Why are China's wealthy hiding their money abroad? And how are they getting their money past China's strict currency controls? Manthorpe explained that unimaginable private wealth had been created in the 1980s under the reforms of paramount Communist Party leader Deng Xiaoping. And now it was flooding cities like Vancouver, Seattle, and Melbourne. Figures from Chinese national banks predicted 320 billion in cash would flee China in 2015, Manthorpe said. Some analysts estimated much higher figures. Almost all of the funds came from the top of the pyramid. They are either elite senior members of the ruling Communist Party or close to them through family or business ties, Manthorpe said. They're the elite who have benefited most from the economic revolution. Much of the wealth created is now in the hands of a few families attached to the party. For Alderson, the takeaway from Manthorpe's talk was blunt. China's population was getting raped by its leaders, and Chinese state corruption was turning Vancouver's real estate market into an overpriced collection of lockboxes. But Manthorpe's research didn't address the cash funneling into lottery corp casinos. The multi-billion-dollar question was how the offshore high rollers had acquired industrial loads of paper currency in Canada. It wasn't coming from Canadian banks. For the cops at the summit, it was insane how these gamblers were allowed to lug bags of cash into the casinos every day of the week. All you had to do was watch the casino surveillance footage. You had guys carrying big Louis Vuitton and Gucci leather totes. And for the Ultra Whales hockey bags stuffed with $20 bills. GPEB investigators had literally witnessed gamblers dragging hockey bags holding up to 1.2 million cash up the escalators to private cash cages. You would see a couple of guys rapidly unload the bricks of cash wrapped in elastic bands and shove them across the counter to cashiers who stacked the paper like hay bales and then fired the bills through electronic money counters. When the bills were tallied, the cashiers passed the gamblers high-value betting chips, and the cash was immediately spirited from the cage down to the casino vault. $20 bills down to the casino vault, and this happened night after night. The way Alderson, the RCMP, and GPEB investigators at the summit saw it, it was obviously incredibly suspicious, but not for all the lottery corp executives. One of them said that VIPs were acquiring cash in Canada through legitimate underground banking. It wasn't Canada's problem that China barred its citizens from exporting more than 50,000 per year. And so, he said, the Chinese community in Canada had established underground banking methods to facilitate trade. And this wasn't a bad thing. As ridiculous and blinded as this argument may have sounded to the cops in the room, it was basically unwritten policy for Canada's real estate and banking sectors. So as the cash heated up at the summit, this former cop doubled down on his arguments. For years, the RCMP had known that wealthy visitors from loads of cash around Vancouver, the lottery corp executive said, but police had never been able to prove this cash was criminal. That's when Wayne Rideout, the highest ranking RCMP officer at the summit, stepped in. It's silly to argue that bags of cash carried into BC casinos aren't suspicious, Rideout said. Calvin Krusty, a federal serious and organized crime unit leader, and Rideout had talked before the summit. Are we the king or are we the pawn at this table? Was the lottery corp trying to play everyone else, building a narrative to justify revenue from Chinese capital flight? So the next day, June 5th, 2015, Krusty emailed GPEB's Director of Investigations, Len Mayer. It is a complex issue, but as stated yesterday, while the flight of capital issue is a key concern, we know that China's financial elite have close ties to organized crime, Krusty wrote, and we know the cartels are close to Chinese networks. So I'll end there. Krusty was talking in that last quote, this is evidence before the Cullen Commission, that essentially he nailed the scheme that this book is about. That is, China's Communist Party financial elite have close ties to organized crime, and Latin American cartels are close to these Chinese underground banking networks. And I think part of my book is that, as shocking as it was for me to discover this fact, people up high in the RCMP and intelligence really in the West know about this. And so I learned it, I had my mind blown, and I'm introducing it to Canadians that are trying to understand some of the troubling real estate activity or drug activity in their cities. Thanks, back to you, James.
Thanks very much for that reading of the passage, one of the passages from your book, Sam. And I think a lot of the people in the audience here today, following TI Canada, are aware of things like the Vancouver model of snow washing. But when you get into those level of details, when you hear from the people who are charged with looking at or trying to solve these issues, as you say, and as I think even Attorney General David Eby said when he testified to the federal government, it still blows your mind. It blows you away, the level of these things and how they work. So what I want to do is explore into a little bit of the systematic issues around this. And let's start off, as I said, the Vancouver model. And that might not be a surprise to a lot of people on the call, but we have heard these terms in the last couple of years. And you described it to an extent in that opening line. Would you be able to just kind of, in a compact way, describe what the Vancouver model is to our audience?
Sure, I'll unpack it as tightly as I can. Really, it enlarges upon what I just read there. So in mainland China, we have that ultra wealthy peak of the pyramid that has accumulated so much wealth. I won't say it's all corruption, but I think the people, many people watching today, because some of them would talk to the same people I do at high levels in intelligence and criminal law enforcement, understand corruption is a major source of wealth creation at the time in China. And the book exposed the connections between Communist Party officials, transnational gangsters, and tycoons, captains of industry. And so, of course, these are the people I point to in that first passage. I spoke about the whale gamblers that traveled to Vancouver to gamble these tremendous sums. Literally 1.2 million cash in one transaction is the highest suspicious large cash buy-in recorded at River Rock Casino. Here's another fact. I speak in my book about the major Big Circle Boy loan shark who facilitated the Vancouver model. Really, it's the Macau model of money laundering. These are what I call the federal kingpins, traditional heroin kingpins of North America. They run drug banks in China, Macau, and Hong Kong, and they established a node in Vancouver that offered the same services. So they will allow the corrupt officials to come to, let's say, First Step Macau or now Vancouver. There's a deal between the two parties, the wealth inside of China and the gangster in Macau or Vancouver. The gangster will loan you that drug cash when you arrive in Macau or in Vancouver, but especially in Vancouver and Richmond, drug cash was the key. So we have the ultra wealthy person traveling into Vancouver, receiving up to $1 million, more commonly 100,000, 500,000 in $20 bills often of drug proceeds. They gamble the chips. That's their debt obligation. And if they win, they get a casino check. And of course, they can very quickly put that down on a mortgage in Vancouver, buy a home, continue to launder money. But the key transaction is they paid back that debt to the narco loan shark in Richmond who lent that drug cash. They pay the debt back in China from their source of wealth. So the transaction flows directly to a gang drug, a bank account run by gangsters in China. And then you can see how this is what shocked people about the Vancouver model. The drug cash is being collected in Richmond, laundered through these whale gamblers. The debt is paid in China. That funds more fentanyl precursor imports coming back into Vancouver. The precursors are printed into fentanyl pills, pressed up, sold, more cash is then loaned out, and the cycle continues in a nutshell.
Thanks for that description, Sam. It's gut-wrenching to hear about how the Canadian system is used. And I want to just linger on the Vancouver model. As you described it, it's very specific. And as you say, picks up from the Macau model of whale gamblers and the underground banks. And one of the things around the book, I suppose, is the focus on the CCP and its influence with narcos. But to make a point that the vulnerabilities within Canada, they're not only targeted by corrupt officials from China, and you do spell out some other networks like Latin American drug networks. And if we look at journalism from other parts of Canada, say in Montreal, Hugo Joncaz has reported about West African money coming into Montreal. Could you you pick up on that in the book, do you want to maybe elaborate on some other areas that are exploiting Canada's loopholes?
Sure. And you raised the right point. My book focuses on Chinese transnational crime because this is the major threat in Canada, both from a criminal public safety aspect and also from the political connectivity of the party in Beijing that uses these gangs. But if you'll allow me, I think I have, again, I would rely on evidence from the Cullen Commission quoted in my book, I think perfectly answers your question. So I write in my afterword, transnational cartels are increasingly setting up in Canada because the country has become a weak link in international law enforcement. That's the point that Gary Clement made when I interviewed him about the explosion of growth in Iranian underground hawalas in Toronto. Canada is showing itself to be weak, he said, because what we are seeing in Toronto is identical to the underground banking we are seeing on the West Coast with money laundering and how it relates to the regime in China. In Toronto, it relates to the regime in Iran. And Calvin Krusty advanced the same argument in his Cullen Commission testimony in March 2021. He pointed directly at BC government casinos and the RCMP's knowledge of massive floods of $20 bills pouring into River Rock. We're open to corruption by having this illicit money moving through our financial systems and our casinos, and our regulatory people having oversight of that, and ministers' offices knowing this, Krusty testified. I was concerned from 2012 to 2015, what has changed? Why continue to take this money? Because it was somewhat obvious to everybody in 2012, the money was illicitly generated. So I thought the public deserved to know. So I'll go back to your question, and what my answer shows is that these are very sophisticated transnational crime networks. The book, I think for the first time to the public, gets to know, as Krusty sort of indicated in what I just read there, that police know that at the high level, state-sponsored crime has come to dominate these networks in Canada. So that would be crime networks connect Hezbollah and the Iranian regime, high-level Chinese transnational crime, Russian criminal activity and state activity is in there, and they're interrelated with the Latin American cartels. So this is about underground banking that has woven into Canada's economy.
Thanks
you
for
hear
that.
Me, James?
I can hear you, and I hope everyone else online, I see nodding, and I see, while you were talking, a lot of disappointed looks of head shakes and acknowledgement of what you're saying, Sam. which is, is difficult for everyone to go through to hear about this. And as you say, the money's coming in from different sources, different networks, and your book very thoroughly describes the network coming from China. It goes into, as you say, some of the other global networks, but the common denominator is, of course, Canada and our weak systems, as you point out what Gary Clement said. Sam, do we still have you? Oh, I think Sam just dropped off. I know that he was having connection issues. So I am going to jump in for just 1 second to say that we've seen within Canada these different issues that all lead to Canada being the underpinning denominator within it all. And of course, at TI Canada, what we are looking at is how to plug in those loopholes within Canada. My apologies, I'm getting multiple messages coming up about who is trying to log in all at the same time. We do have Dean Brextel, who is the publisher. Dean, I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but I just want, if you're willing to, are you happy to talk about the success of Wilful Blindness in it being published and how it's been doing in its reception?
Sure. Thank you, James, for that opportunity. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so very quickly, this project started about 2.5 years ago when I first met Sam, actually through his investigations on the large cash transactions when Global had done the story. And I don't know if everybody remembers back here in Ontario, but Patrick Brown, the then leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, had been bringing up this exact issue as to why the government was awarding contracts to Great Canadian Gaming when it seemed that their business model seemed to be a little bit off. And as we know, and so the book sales are going phenomenally well, both here in US and in Canada. We are getting a great traction in terms of publicity and interest out of the United States. The mainstream media in Canada has been a little bit less interested in picking up on the narrative, but that's slowly coming out. We've had a number of great reviews. So yeah, the book is taking off very well, and it's a dedication to Sam's phenomenal insights and great network of people that he's been able to extract such great insights for the public for the book. So thank you for that opportunity.
Great, thanks, Dean, and thanks for reaching out initially to me whenever the book was coming out. It was a great read, and of course, thanks, Sam, for getting me an advance copy to read it with Dean. So Sam, getting back, can you hear me?
I can. So sorry, I pivoted to another computer and system there.
It's the reality of the times that we're in. I want to pick up on the last thing you were talking about, getting into, there's all the different sources of money coming from all over the world that all have their own reasons of why money is being stolen in different areas. But the common denominator, of course, is Canada. And you point to former RCMP officer Gary Clement saying we've got weak systems. Can you give our audience a review of some of the systems and institutional issues that you unearthed and what most got to you that you saw as cross-Canadian, maybe even BC specific issues?
Well, the focus, of course, started with real estate in Vancouver, and it got into casinos in Vancouver. And I think the casinos are just the most explicit and recognizable form of money laundering in the Vancouver or the Macau model. And so you have these very powerful transnational gangs that my book showed are politically in some ways protected, of course, in mainland China, because the Chinese Communist Party will use transnational gangs within their political objectives. And so these gangs that are protected in China, that is why along with the growth of China's mercantilism and global trade, the gangs too have benefited and risen. So there's that mutually beneficial arrangement with the Communist Party and transnational gangs, legitimate global trade and illegitimate underground banking, where you see that my sources and research showed that Chinese cartels, we can see the reporting in news outlets in the United States now, as well as Canada, that Chinese underground banking cartels are working to move the Latin American drug gang money all over the world and weaving it into trade. So casinos, again, you cannot miss anyone. A child can see that a hockey bag with $1 million and $20 bills coming into the casino, there's corruption inside the casino. These people are trained in anti-money laundering. They can't let that happen without corruption. And my research, the Cullen Commission also has shown evidence there was certainly corruption involving gangsters using casino staff, that is regulated BC government employees essentially, as Calvin Krusty's answer indicated, all the way up to the ministerial level in BC's government. There was warnings, and it was understood that this is suspected drug cash. And for legal reasons, it's called suspected drug cash. But I'm going to assert that any reasonable person that knows that a known high-level heroin trafficker who is also a known high-level loan shark, who is also the biggest VIP in the River Rock Casino, and I now have the record showing a suspected fentanyl precursor importer. We're talking about people that are known criminals, so it's not suspected drug cash. When you put that all together, it was known drug cash money laundering. Another data point I haven't reported yet, the 36 highest level VIPs connected to this Big Circle Boys loan shark in Richmond, they gambled. They bought in with 176 million in cash in one single year. That is 36 whale gamblers, almost 200 million in drug cash through the hands of just the highest level loan shark. So what had to go wrong? Look, I've just said that this is about 200 million in money laundering from 37 people, all connected to a Chinese transnational gang, and there were hundreds of whale gamblers. So everyone watching, if you want to do some quick math in your heads, I've conservatively estimated that's 2 to 3 billion in drug money laundering in BC government casinos going back to the early 2000s up to 2017 or 18. And so you had political corruption, you've got regulatory corruption, you have corruption of very powerful leaders of industry. In this case, I would assert casino industry. And it goes further, I believe, in the currency exchanges were deeply intertwined in these networks in Richmond. Lawyers, my book points to a couple of Richmond lawyers directly involved in e-pirate casino money laundering surveillance. So you ask the systems and the institutions, I'm asserting that it goes all the way up from the people in the cash cages in some of these businesses, some bank cashiers, some bank managers, up to people working in ministers' offices in BC's government. And I believe it goes, we can see this in Ontario and Quebec as well.
Sam, you we've talked a lot about the challenges and the root causes of the money flows and where problems lie. There's been some movement in the last few years, and some of it directly related and specifically attributed to your reporting, including the Cullen Commission, the British Columbia inquiry into money laundering that you cite, as well as British Columbia has passed the Land Ownership Transparency Act, which led to the registry, which is now online. And we just saw in April the federal government propose in their budget a publicly accessible registry of beneficial ownership. Now designated non-financial businesses and professions in Canada also have to conduct beneficial ownership due diligence. I always argue that no one change or tool is ever going to solve all issues. There are no silver bullets in anti-corruption. It's a multitude of it's a multitude of tools and initiatives. However, there is some progress. As someone whose reporting has led to quite a bit of this progress, how do you feel about some of these specific changes, like the registries being proposed and already enacted, and the Cullen Commission? Especially as a reporter, will access to beneficial ownership data help you in your investigations?
Yes, and my answer is I'm very I feel satisfied and rewarded that some of my reporting over the years has definitely triggered changes and regulatory changes, starting with the transparency registries. I would start by saying I'm asserting that Canada's problems, if this is a sort of a gasoline needle or a threat level needle, it's just bouncing in the red where we've been for decades in Canada. So it's a good start that we are seeing. I would say it's starting to alleviate off that red line and hopefully starting to swing back in a direction with those transparency registries. I haven't even gotten a chance to dive in and match my databases with some of the information. So when I get some space, I'm very much looking forward to troll through those new resources. But I can tell you, James, that I've already seen in the online community, we're seeing citizen researchers trolling through and finding, for example, let's say a realtor in Vancouver that owns 20 properties. I've seen such sort of evidence put out on in social media, and I think that's exactly the right intention. We heard from the United Kingdom and other jurisdictions that providing these records to allow citizens to have some visibility on the wealth is a great step. And I'm sure it will be excellent for, of course, investigators with greater powers than citizen journalists, and even journalists that do have the ability to tap other databases. So that's great. Jumping into the Cullen Commission, there's been a lot of discussion on, has it sort of fulfilled its mandate or its hope? And starting with the casinos, I believe a very powerful case was made, again, that at the highest levels in British Columbia politics and industry, it was known this was drug money laundering. It might not have been known the extent to which how the Vancouver model facilitated this transnational fentanyl precursor importation loop. That direct evidence is so powerful, and it has come out in my book and the commission. The records are there. For anyone denying them, I would just warn them, you're off base, because the evidence is there. But so on the casino side, I'm very happy. I think they proved the case that any number of laws in Canada that allowed casinos to run were overridden, and the revenue generation was really, let's just put it out there, greed was the reason. This case has been proven. The evidence was put forward. I believe that casino licenses should have been pulled. I don't know if they can be pulled retroactively, but I think that's a discussion that should be had, and I'm really eager to see what Justice Cullen finds on that. What I would say is that I don't think that the Cullen Commission went into the highest levels of real estate money laundering or even approached them. I'll give you one example. I'm aware of one of the biggest real estate developers in Vancouver right now, very active. My book showed that this person, a transnational business person from Guangdong, who had been subject of many sort of reports about his mysterious wealth, he was connected to a casino money laundering transaction involving a high-level casino employee in Richmond, where $200,000 in a third-party buy-in was facilitated. And so we didn't hear in the Cullen Commission about this person's growing real estate footprint. So without being self-serving, I believe that that is where my book went beyond, in showing such cases. And my book did point back to the tycoons of Hong Kong, how they were connected to the Chinese Communist Party. And I hate to say it, how some of them were connected to heroin trafficking gangs, according to my evidence, had a massive real estate footprint in the late 1980s in Vancouver. And I didn't hear that tested in the Cullen inquiry. So I don't want to rain on the parade. A lot of good has come out of the inquiry, but there are higher levels that it didn't touch.
And Sam, we're just over our time, but you were disconnected and we started a minute late. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and if you can give a very brief thought on it. Canada is often thought of as a regionalized country. There was, of course, the Maclean's article about a decade ago that said Quebec is the most corrupt province. People sometimes will even look at the Cullen Commission. And when I say people, I'm being an Ontarian here and saying Ontarians will see something like this and think, well, that's the other side of the Rockies. And we always knew that there was interesting things happening in BC dynamics. But even Prime Minister Trudeau in 2019 acknowledged that money laundering is a national issue. Your book heavily focuses on BC, but it does touch into the grander Canadian landscape. In a very quick thought, do you think that more needs to be done at the national level to investigate this issue?
Yes, absolutely. My book followed my path of discovery, which was mostly focused on BC, but towards the end of my research, I did discover this is the Canada model of money laundering. Very briefly, it's because the Markham underground illegal casino networks that are politically connected to the Chinese Communist Party are deeply connected to the Vancouver networks. And again, the Hawala, the underground banking involving the Middle East and Iran and Hezbollah actors so active in Toronto, and this interweaves with the Chinese transnational organized crime underground banking networks and the Latin American drug cartels. Montreal, of course, very deeply connected as well to all of those networks. And so to your question, what springs to my mind is there was a real outrage when that Maclean's article came out. Similarly, there was a real outrage when Richard Fadden in 2010 said that BC has a big problem with regards to foreign interference. What I'm putting forward is all of the crime and the foreign interference is connected. And in Canada, we seem to have a problem that when someone makes a strong statement, there's a rash of outrage from certain quarters that seems, in my view, to be trying to quiet down or suppress strong statements. And James, as you know, your organization put snow washing on the map for good reason. And I think as Canadians, my final comment would be, in some ways, we need to grow up to the geopolitical reality and face these tough issues, these tough questions with adult answers.
Sam, thank you so much for joining us today and getting through a lot of content in your book in a quick digestion. I read it, and as I turned each page, I grew more infuriated. But also, I always like to end on a positive note. I grew hopeful that we are in the right direction. Thank you for acknowledging TI Canada's work in this run on anti-money laundering as one of our large campaigns. And we certainly hope that when the publicly accessible beneficial ownership registry is established, it's going to help investigative journalists like yourself and other investigators that are logged in here with us. And so we'll keep up the work, Sam, and you keep up the great investigating. I know there's much more for you to dig into. And so with that, I know everyone's on mute, but a silent round of applause for our keynote speaker, Sam Cooper. Sam, thanks so much again. All great success for the book, and
Thanks.
Hope everybody
It's a real
picks up a
honor.
copy.